was the end of the farm crisis, and so rural Iowa was having this whole sort of reawakening, and we were out recruiting new industry. We were realizing, I think at that time, that we needed to reduce our dependence solely on agriculture and how the agricultural landscape was changing. No one had invested in housing in rural Iowa for over 20 years, and it was time to get that started. And generally, with housing related anyway, public funds are often the first money in. We've done that in rural Iowa, and then we were asked to do it in downtown Sioux City, and then downtown Waterloo, downtown Clinton. We've been at sort of the forefront of starting these movements. We go in, and then hopefully change is seen and people realize that this is a viable thing that you can build within the community or within the downtown.
By 1994, we realized that adding units was something that many of these communities needed. So it was at that point in time that we looked around and discovered that the only program out there was the low-income housing tax credit program. The sophistication, the third-party expertise that was needed to pull off a low-income housing tax credit program was very different than the first couple projects we did under Upper Des Moines umbrella.
It's such a complex, multi-layered financial package that has to come together for these projects to be successful. So the experience that people have working with housing tax credits, there's almost no way to get it without going through some projects and finding out maybe the numbers don't work quite like you thought they would.
Something that comes to mind, Call Terminal, for example. It's a very large project. I think it had 48 units initially with a pretty large commercial component to it. Within the first 5 or 6 years, we realized that that commercial component was not performing as we had anticipated. There were some issues there. So it started generating deficits.
Part of what we continue to do for our buildings is rethink how we're doing things, and can we find a creative solution to solve some of these problems once we've been funded? And Call Terminal is an excellent example of, we thought we'd be able to get more commercial development in that area, and it turns out historic 4th and Sioux City is a property where people really want to live.
CHI took an extremely proactive approach to try and curb the amount of deficits that it was generating, and worked with Enterprise to come up with a very creative financial solution, which financially restructured the project, and on top of that added another 22 units of affordable housing.
The biggest difference from my perspective between Community Housing Initiative's project in 1994 versus a project in 2015 is the expertise that we have with our staff. And that expertise is financial. It is actually in the development of projects, being a sound, astute real estate developer that doesn't have to rely completely on the architect or on the contractor.
Whether it be the executive leadership and Doug, Sam, the accounting department with Mark and Jenny, property management with Chelsea and Brittany, and compliance with Connie and Donna, maintenance. Every aspect of CHI, every component is extremely responsive to any issues, questions that I might have.
At the end of the day, there's a certain knack to be a developer and understand what the community needs, and that's why we leave it to you folks to do that. And we just try to make sure we provide the financing end of it, or at least a piece of it, so that you can do what you do well. And our job is to look for compliance, monitor compliance, and make sure that you have access to the resources so that you can keep the rents affordable. And it's a good partnership.
Every single project that we've ever done has been a response to a community need. We have always been a very close partner with community leaders, economic development professionals, city staff, sometimes county staff, even state staff. We've been approached many times by politicians or people who say, listen, there's a serious housing need. Here's where we have a gap. And interestingly enough, Doug and I both got called by different people for the Van Allen. The Van Allen is a former department store. It was designed by Louis Sullivan. it is a national historic treasure, and it was in peril.
At the time that CHI came on the scene, the city was actively considering whether to have CHI redevelop it or to demolish it. And the fact that CHI was willing to redevelop it, I have little doubt prevented its demolition. And I also have the feeling that had the Van Allen building been demolished, it would have been the beginning of the end for downtown Clinton.
What sold me on it was when the city administrator and the director of economic development literally shoved me through a hole in the ceiling, and I stood on top of that building and looked at the Mississippi River. And then I thought, oh goodness, here we go.
Certainly it's a company that's proven its bona fides in Clinton. They've delivered. They've done what they said they were going to do, and the Van Allen building is now 12 years in service. They've maintained it well. Good property management in addition to planning it well in the first place.
Since we moved in, I've had two separate people come up to me and say, hey, when are you going to move? Because I really want your apartment. I'm really looking about downsizing. I'm really looking, I want to be downtown. And that's something, as I've talked to other people, that they just haven't heard before. Nobody walks up to them and says, hey, we want to be downtown.
Those that are that historic component, whether they're right in the downtown or fringe of a downtown, we need people that will invest in those, and they're very difficult to find because of the risk, or the investors don't want to be the first investor in. But when a CHI organization comes in and says, we're going to do this, it will cause a ripple effect.
The for-profit developers don't go where we go. They don't do what we do. What we do is help you identify where your real housing need is, and then we figure out a way to tailor those rules and regulations to meet what your community and those residents will need.
We're kind of in this first wave of back to Main Street movement. So the first wave are the people who take a little more risk. It's the people who say, well, there's only one bar and not 7, and I don't have my sushi restaurant, I don't have all this other stuff, but I'm willing to do that because I think there's something cool here. I think there's a potential. So we're kind of in that first wave, and I think that CHI has really set the foundation for that second wave of people. Because of that demand, the Wilson Building across the street, which is another historic building, was bought and is being turned into 32 market rate apartments.
I think those buildings would have also been very threatened had they not redeveloped the Van Allen building. And now that we have these 3 buildings redeveloped, I'm very hopeful that downtown is going to reach the critical mass that will sustain small businesses downtown.
The impact on downtown Clinton from all of our historic projects, CHI's definitely left a footprint there. There's so much more vitality, and even through the economic downturn, they've been able to attract new businesses and keep things going. And it's phenomenal to be a part of it.
Over time, it has become more and more apparent to communities and people out in the community that there is a strong relationship between affordable housing and the economic vitality of a community. CHI, we've always known this, but it's becoming very common knowledge among economic development officials, mayors, city councils.
If you can't attract people to your community to fill existing jobs, let alone new jobs, that's a problem. The economy stalls, and it's going to go where they can attract people, or the existing population already is in place. Housing is a critical piece of that, and we've been talking about that in Northwest Iowa for years.
We've developed 1,400 apartments, which probably serves 2,000 households across the state. I think one of our staff people astutely brought up the other day that that's bigger than probably 70% of the towns in Iowa.
Oh, yeah.
So that's the impact we've had.
CHI has been an exemplary group since they've come in. So the work they do around rental housing is some of the finest I've seen in the region and when I visited other parts of the country. So the development work is just excellent. It immediately gives people a sense of pride to be able to move into your units.
The apartments are really nice on the inside, and There's a great sense of community here. All the neighbors kind of get to know each other a lot more than other apartment complexes from what I have experienced.
If people are interested in living here or coming here, you should come because it's a great opportunity. Even the activities, they offer tutoring for children, fun activities, science, they offer so much here and I love it. I just love it.
More than just the bricks and sticks, you have to look at the people who live there, who are invested there, and that inevitably involves looking beyond the rental units and engaging the residents. They're the ones who live there, they're the ones who have the investment.
We stepped back and asked ourselves, what if we did more comprehensive work in one or two areas of the state over a decade? What could we do as an organization? Not stop doing projects, but adding this as something else that we were able to do.
So to be able to empower them, like Chai is doing with the residents around their play-space areas by looking at specific beautification projects, looking at how we can develop the neighborhood leadership, looking at how the leadership can be ambassadors to change the perception of a neighborhood. All of that is critically important.
I wish more people would see and visit the properties and talk to residents and hear about what a difference it's made in their lives and what a difference it's made in communities where CHI has chosen to invest.
Gee whiz, I was really surprised when they invited me to become a board member, but being a native of the area and appreciating the fact that they're recycling these buildings and making really affordable and beautiful homes for people is really quite an honor.
If anything has happened with CHI that really points to their success, it has been a willingness to grow, a willingness to learn. You know you have core competencies in one area, particularly in rental housing development, but you've not been afraid to ask the next set of questions. And the next set of questions seems to be, how can we do more? How can we have a greater impact?
We're constantly evaluating the market, the business climate in Iowa, and we have to anticipate trends. We have to take a look at some of the things that will be facing challenging housing situations in the future. Iowa has an aging population. We also have a need to attract young workers and new creative classes.
It's part of our challenge to figure out how we shouldn't be so reliant on what happens in Washington. And so we've set ourselves on a good path to be self-sufficient and have thought about it strategically, where to invest, when to invest, what it looks like.
I see CHI 10 years from now doing what we've always done better, developing quality, affordable rental housing projects, and having greater impact beyond that project in neighborhoods and communities across Iowa.
It really starts, I think, with the leadership and the board saying, where do we go next? We're not done. The story is only unfolding. And that has been, I think, a key characteristic of CHI that I think is going to serve you well for the next 20 years as well.